You know, I was reading your book. Really, the subtitle could be How to Dress Well, Politically Speaking. You wove in, among your anecdotes and your stories over time in 4 or 5 decades in politics, a message, and the message is clear. Dress well.
Yeah, if the world is a stage, then you should be in costume. Look good, feel good. Look at it this way. If someone applied for a job with you and they were poorly groomed, unkempt, wearing dirty or wrinkled clothes, unshaven, didn't have polished shoes, scuffed shoes, would you hire them? Of course not. So not only is there the self-satisfaction of being well turned out, but I think it also helps you exude an air of confidence, and it shows that you're fastidious in everything you do.
One of the words you use is Spezzatura. I'm of Italian descent, but I had to look that one up. And that's essentially dressing well without looking like you're trying too hard. Would you characterize it that way?
Yeah, it needs, it shows that it's not studied, that it's something that comes naturally that you haven't thought about. Spezzatura, it's a term that means casual in a sense. You look well put together, but as if you'd never even spent a second thinking about it. Think Fred Astaire, Cary Grant, Gary Cooper. Those are the epitome of Ronald Reagan. Those are the epitome of Spezzatura.
And I want to get to a couple of those folks you just mentioned, but first I want to go to rule number 1. You start your book off with some thoughts regarding people in general. There are men of action and men of words, which then dovetails into your second rule, which is essentially you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. But really, men of action, women of action, that's what defines a good politician in the end, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I don't mean to denigrate the thinkers. We need thinkers, we need wonks, and we need policy positions. But if nobody goes out and advocates them, if nobody takes the risks, well, then you can have no success, which goes to rule number 2. You can't win the game unless you're in the game. My respect goes to the men and women who are in the arena, not the people who stand on the sidelines and point out how guys like you and I could do something better, or he should have said this, he should have said that, he should have done this. No, the credit belongs to those who actually get in the arena, because if you succeed, well, you'll know the thrill of victory. And if you fail, you will still know that you lived and that you sought to achieve. So my respect goes to those in the arena.
Stone's rule number 4 is an axiom, but you added a little adjective to it that I can't mention on the air, and that is the past is a blank prologue. Okay, we get the point. And that is, you know, pay attention to history, dummy. And that leads me to some of your great stories. You have peppered in there many stories about Richard Nixon, and one involving Louis Armstrong, who was a goodwill ambassador, and showing the kinder side, the gentler side of Richard Nixon.
Well, in this particular case, Louis Armstrong had gone on a UN goodwill tour playing his trumpet in Africa on behalf of the State Department. When he came back into the United States, he'd been on several of these trips. It was customary for him not to go through customs as a dignitary. On this particular occasion, however, when he landed at what was then Idlewild Airport, he was summoned into the customs line. Louis was upset because he was muling about 4 pounds of marijuana in his suitcase, and he began to sweat, knowing that they would find it. The doors swung open, and Vice President Richard Nixon had just landed at Idlewild. He asked Louis, what are you doing here? And he said, well, Pops, I just landed from my goodwill tour, and they say I have to go through customs. Nonsense, says Nixon. Let the vice president usher you through. Whereupon Nixon picks up the suitcase full of marijuana and takes it to a waiting car where Satchmo is whisked away. So Richard Nixon unknowingly muled 4 pounds of grass through customs in New York City.
You have some great quotes from Richard Nixon. He said many interesting things. Among them, a man is not finished when he is defeated. He is only finished when he quits. And that really defines Richard Nixon and his career, going from Dick Nixon, reincarnating himself, to Richard Milhouse Nixon. He also said the only thing worse than being wrong is being boring. Was Richard Nixon boring?
Well, in 1968, when in a three-way race, he had a small lead. At the end of that race, he tried to run out the clock. He tried to be as bland as possible, and it came this close to costing him victory.